It's a great pleasure to warmly welcome you to the 23rd seminar of the International PhD in Progress Seminar Series Phase 3, organised by Naumann and the Global South Network. Again, a big thanks going out to the founder and convener of the Global South Network, the GSN, Naumann, who's a lecturer in law at the Leicester Law School, and also the organizer of the PhD in Progress series, and was previously successfully organized a very diverse and inclusive Phase 1 and Phase 2 a seminar series of this last year as well. Just very briefly, because I'm aware that we're a bit pressed for time, very briefly, just to say who I am. My name is Stefani Pletz, and I previously worked at the Sheffield Law School for 7 years, so I think maybe Ying, we have met before, probably bumped into each other before at Sheffield Law School, and I'm now working at the University of Huddersfield Law School. My background is in international financial markets regulation, capital markets law, financial law, very similar to the participants here. I've worked as a senior associate in finance in Dublin, crucially before the financial crisis. I left before the financial crisis, but it's a very interesting environment to work in and also to study. We are teaching in Sheffield, and we are teaching in Huddersfield the corporate LLM, and indeed we're teaching aspects of Chinese corporate governance, which is why I'm very excited to see the presentation today. And I'm going to have to restrain myself because I have so many questions. We do teach aspects of Chinese corporate governance, and of course international / comparative corporate governance in those corporate law programs. We are joined, and we had a brief chat already. We are joined by Ben, or Ebenezer. Ben, I hope you're okay if I say Ben, who is a discussant today and who is very kindly agreed to join us from the Leicester Law School. You are an associate professor, Ben, at the law school in Leicester, and you have held visiting lectureships in international trade and shipping law at King's College London, and in the law of carriage of goods by the sea at the University of Nottingham. And you have been the director of the Leicester LLM degree program, so you will be all aware of the corporate LLM. And your book is with Oxford University Press, Letters of Credit, The Law and Practice of Compliance. And Naumann tells me is the first and only work of that magnitude to devote itself entirely to an extensive and thorough analysis of the problem routinely faced by bankers and other trade finance professionals in ascertaining irregular tender and documents under the letter of credit facilities. I'm hearing that the second edition of the book is in preparation and projected for the release in 2024. So Ben, another very busy academic joining us as a discussant. So thanks very much for that, Ben. We're also joined by Emilia. Thank you very much for coming along. Emilia Oris-Onyiri, apologies if I'm mispronouncing this. You are the peer commentator, so thanks very much for doing that. And you are also a doctoral researcher at the University of Nottingham Law School. And the research interests, or Emilia's research interests, center around international trade, finance, and economic law, so very, very similar. And hopefully we'll be having lovely discussions later. Emilia obtained her Bachelor of Law first class honours degree from the University of and a master's degree, in financial and commercial law from the University of Central Lancashire here in the UK. Emilia is a qualified barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, where she practiced advocacy in civil, corporate, financial and commercial law disputes before commencing her doctoral research at the University of Nottingham. Emilia is also a certified mediator and arbitrator, a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, and a member of the Nigerian Institute of Chartered Arbitrators. A very, very impressive profile. So thanks very much, Emilia, for coming along and being the peer commentator. Last but not least, a very warm welcome to the guest speaker, to Ying Zheng. And she's been studying for a PhD at the law school at the University of Leicester since 2021. And her research topic centers on corporate governance in China, political determinants, challenges and solutions. So for those of you who've been doing corporate governance, international corporate governance, we're all aware that the Chinese system is a very specific, distinct system. So it's going to be very interesting to listen to the presentation. Before joining Leicester Law School, Ying obtained a master's degree with merit from the University of Sheffield, where she completed her dissertation titled Promotion of CSR Corporate Social Responsibility Through Company Law and Corporate Governance, a comparison of English law and Chinese law. And just very, very quickly, Ying, you have 30 to 35 minutes for your presentation of corporate governance in China, political determinants, challenges and solutions. And then we will have 5 minutes for the comments and questions of the discussants and the peer commentator. And after that, we'll have about, depending on how we're going with time, we'll have about 15 minutes of questions, answers by the attendees, if that's okay. Please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor to have the opportunity to talk my research with you today. And the title of my project is Corporate Governance in China, Political Determinants, Challenges and Solutions. And my research question is, how does political interventionism shape corporate governance in China, and what are the challenges and solutions? My thesis aims to explore how political factors influence corporate governance in China and whether different governance systems are effective in the Chinese context. And I will identify the challenges they face and try to propose some corresponding solutions. And the theoretical perspective my research drawn upon is the agency theory. Agency relationship arises whenever one party engages the other party to provide his or her with certain services and delegates certain decision-making authority to the latter. The agent usually knows the relevant facts better than the principal, and there is no guarantee that the agent will perform as they promise. This will directly or indirectly reduce the performance value of the agent to the principal, since the principal must be expensive to monitor the agent. And in a corporate context, agency problems arise due to separation of ownership and control. Investors rely on managers to generate financial returns. When a principal, an investor, hires an agent, a manager, to perform certain duties under a contract, the agent may not always act following the interest of the principal. And company shareholders as principals and managers as agents have different interests, demands, and the agent's cost will arise in such an agency relationship. To reduce this kind of agency problem and protect the shareholders' money and returns, corporate governance systems are needed to motivate and supervise managers. In addition, in companies with concentrated ownership, the controlling shareholders who hold a dominant share can control the board and the company, and they also have ability to exploit minority shareholders. When the interests of controlling and minority shareholders clash, controlling shareholders might exploit minority shareholders. And this will also create the agency cost. And a good corporate governance system can also mitigate this type of agency problem by restraining the behavior of the controlling shareholder and providing protection for minority shareholders. And there is also a type of agency problem that exists between the company itself and other stakeholders that's contracting with the company, such as creditors or employees. The key here is to ensure the company does not exploit other stakeholders, such as exploit employees. But this is more related to corporate social responsibility, which is not the focus of my research. The next part is about the meaning of corporate governance. Cadbury defined corporate governance as a system to direct and control the company. And this is now generally accepted definition. Therefore, the argument adopted in my research is as a system to direct and control the company, corporate governance should be able to mitigate the agency cost between those who supply money and those who control money, and prevent the supplier from being exploited by the controller. In other words, the key to addressing the agency problem is to ensure that investors, whether controlling shareholders or minority investors, can get a return on their investment rather than being wasted. My research aims to explore the dynamics of how political intervention shapes corporate governance in China, the effectiveness of different governance mechanisms in practice and associated challenges, and try to propose solutions to build a governance framework that can protect the interests of investors. Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah. My internet my internet connection seems dropped.
I think we can hear you. We can see you. Everything is fine on our side.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay. To answer my research question, I used two research approaches. The first is doctrinal legal research, where I search, interpret, and analyze laws, regulations, rules, cases, and authoritative materials related to Chinese corporate governance, including references to laws of other countries. And the second method is empirical research, including qualitative and quantitative studies. For the party organization part in the internal governance system, which is a part of my chapter 3, with ethical approval, I interviewed 20 legal professionals, including commercial lawyers, corporate legal advisors, and company management from China, hearing to the views of people involved in daily corporate affairs can help better understand the work of party organization and their roles in governance and finding governance problems. But due to the sensitivity of the materials and respecting the wishes of the interviewees, these interviews were not recorded but transcribed verbatim. In addition, quantitative research is also used for supporting evidence in relevant chapters. For example, regarding the party organization part, I also collected and analyzed primary data by selecting 20 companies from the CSI 300 index to check if they are state-owned or not, if they have party organizations, and if the board chairman and the party committee secretary are the same person. There are also other parts of my research follow similar methods. I mainly use this quantitative research when discussing various internal and external governance mechanisms in Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. And the next part is the structure of my thesis. Besides the introduction and conclusion, there are 4 chapters. Chapter 2 is the background, and Chapter 3 is the internal governance system. Chapter 4, external enforcement institutions, and Chapter 5, proposals to promote corporate governance in China and implications from the Chinese experience. So far, I have completed the Chapter 2 and part of Chapter 3. In Chapter 2, I explain the political interventionism in contemporary China, including the relationship between the Chinese state and the Chinese Communist Party, the legitimacy management of the party, and the new trend in economic and corporate governance in the area of President Xi Jinping. Besides, I reviewed the history and progress of economic transition in China, as well as the development and characteristics of the Chinese stock market. And I also provided an overview of Chinese corporate governance laws. More specifically, after decades of reforms, China's economic has achieved significant growth. China has moved from a poor, traditionally planned economy to the world economy stage. And along with the development of the economy, the Chinese stock market has also expanded. The market has grown in size and the ownership structure has become more diverse. To adapt to the changing economic environment, various corporate governance laws as the supporting system were also constantly reformed, and remarkable progress has been made. And this cautious and slow process of economic and legal reforms has always been accompanied by political intervention from the party, which can even be said to be the determining factor of economic transformation and the legal evolution in China. Economic growth is crucial to the party's political stability, but the party's relationship with the state, in which the party should keep absolute dominance over the state and runs the government, dictates that China cannot accept a liberal economic system. Therefore, China has always been seeking a balance between economic efficiency and state control, and trying to overcome various ideological obstacles. And this chapter concludes that in China, political factors shape the economic environment, thus making the evolution path of relevant laws unique. Just like the first Chinese company law and securities law, to meet the need for reform and opening up policy, China urgently needs a legal system that can provide support and a basis on the road to corporatization of state-owned enterprises, protection of mixed ownership and private ownership, as well as moving toward a market-based economy. This is the chapter 2. The third chapter is the one I am currently working on. And in this chapter, through literature and empirical data from the review of some listed companies' annual reports, I found that the ownership in Chinese listed companies is highly concentrated with a prevalent presence of controlling shareholders. In addition, despite significant privatization efforts in the Chinese economy, state ownership continues to hold a proportion that cannot be overlooked. I also found by comparing state-owned enterprises with private companies that private ownership in the Chinese context doesn't mean independence from the state. Successful companies exhibit a large number of similarities in China, such as closer to state power, access to state subsidies, access to protected markets, and achievement of political priorities. In terms of the participation of party organizations in corporate governance, through literature and qualitative data and quantitative data and original evidence from interviews, I found that most companies, regardless of ownership, have established party organizations, and party organization members often serve on the board of directors and cross-management positions. And even the chairman and the party committee secretary of many companies are the same person. And in major decisions, such as significant investments, party organizations in state-owned enterprises are more involved than in non-state-owned enterprises. The participation of party organizations in corporate governance may play a supervisory role in company operations and prevent the loss of state assets. At the same time, politically engaged companies tend to be closer to state power and have better access to resources. But however, this will also increase the difficulty of communication and the coordination between different governance bodies and affect the efficiency of decision making. Moreover, excessive intervention by party organizations in corporate decision making will weaken directors' discussion of major decisions and reduce the contribution of independent directors. This will reduce the efficiency of the company. And in many cases, the company interest needs to take a backseat to political priorities. So the key here is to achieve a best balance of party organization participation in corporate governance. The next part is shareholders. I have explored the shareholders meeting, the powers and functions of shareholders, and found that many listed companies in China have a large shareholder. It is the state. But this large shareholder has weak supervision over the management and strong exploitation of minority shareholders. This caused what I introduced earlier as the agency problem between shareholders and management, and between large shareholders and minority shareholders. Some might argue that ownership in Chinese companies is concentrated, so there shouldn't be an agency problem between shareholders and management. But when the controlling shareholder is the state, as the state is an abstract owner, it must act through an appointed agent. And these agents are usually government officials who do not directly benefit or suffer from the company's performance. So as a result, they will not have the same incentive and ability to monitor management as private owners. So this kind of agency problem still exists. I haven't yet completed the rest of this chapter, and I will continue to discuss the effectiveness and challenges of the two-tiered board structure in conjunction with literature and empirical data. After completing the internal part, my fourth chapter will discuss a range of state and non-state institutions that have the potential to restrain corporate controllers to promote corporate governance. I will examine the enforcement capabilities of these institutions. I identify the challenges and constraints to this enforcement, and explore the impact of political factors on these institutions, and whether political factors lead to strong state institutions and weak non-state institutions in China. Next, in Chapter 5, I will try to put forward some corresponding suggestions and solutions to some challenges of Chinese corporate governance. And I will also discuss what the world can learn from Chinese experience. Yeah, these are the structures of my thesis and the parts that have been and will be completed. What I want to talk next is the originality and the contributions of my research. First of all, my research can draw on original empirical evidence, including interviews and some quantitative data, to demonstrate my discussion, rather than just relying on secondary literature. Second, the study provides a comprehensive top-to-down framework to show the role of politics in Chinese corporate governance. And moreover, this study also looks at the impact of political factors on the non-state sector, with much of the past literature focusing on the state sector. It could reflect a more contemporary model of economic ownership in China. It's a mix of state and non-state actors, where past literature has seen China as state-dominated. Well, this is a brief overview of my research on Chinese corporate governance. Thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ying, for the presentation. Please, could I invite Ben? I hope you don't mind me saying Ben.
Yes.
Ben, as the discussant, to please share with us your comments, perhaps questions that you have to Ying before we'll go to Emilia. Thank you very much, Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this discussion. Okay, thank you, the convener, Dr. Newman, for the opportunity to attend this discussion. Ying, your paper or your work, in which is work in progress, sounds fantastic. It has a lot of merits from what I can see. At least two key strengths I can see here: the exploration of the role of politics in Chinese corporate governance, and the question of pattern of ownership of companies in Chinese economy. Great points. But I have a few questions. First, the title of your work includes political determinants, and in your slides, you mentioned political interventionism. How would you define political interventionism? Can you explain that? A follow-up question to that is, how much law content do you have in political determinants?
Yes. In my research, interventionism means extreme control rather than a proper level of regulation. And the intervention from the party, there are many, not many, but there are some provisions, like the Article 18 of the 20 and 23 company law, that and the party constitution. They have some provisions to regulate the party participation in corporate governance. And laws on paper actually is very different with the practice. But in practice, political intervention is everywhere in China, especially in corporate governance practice. And when the laws or regulations are conflict with political rules, I think maybe political rules will more important than laws or regulations or other rules. Yeah. So the extreme control from the party, not proper level of regulations, is the political interventionism.
With those challenges which you have just mentioned, how is it that you continue to have increasing flow of foreign investment in China? Because normally many companies around the world, they will prefer an environment or economy where you have less control. So the more restrictive the environment, the less the investment inflow. So I'm just wondering, why is it that China today is almost competing with American economy in terms of strength, in terms of scope, and again in terms of depth? So why is it that you continue to have foreign inflow on increasing basis? How do you explain that? How do you reconcile the restrictions which you just mentioned now with foreign investment inflow in China?
So you mean foreign investment inflow?
Yes, yeah. The West continue to invest in China. Why is it that the Western world, the corporations in the Western world, they continue to invest in China? If you have got very restrictive political environment, or as you mentioned, political determinants influence corporate governance to a significant extent in China. If you have got such influence on corporate governance in China, how do we reconcile that with the inflow of foreign investment from the West?
So you mean if the political intervention have many challenges, why foreign investors will like to put their money in Chinese companies?
Yeah. Why is it that on one hand you have significant control from the government? In other words, you have political intervention. Is that not correct? If you have significant political intervention in the management and control of corporations, particularly large corporations, that ordinarily would be a disadvantage in any economy. In fact, actually, it was a disadvantage in the economy of China before the last 20 years, when the economy went on the upswing. Now is very strong. I mean, probably a first world economy. But before 20 years ago, the Chinese political environment influenced everything. And as a result, the West did not find it attractive to go to China. But with the picture you painted, it appears to hark back to what we had 20 years ago. That's why I'm asking whether the picture you painted, if it is so bad today, how do we explain the continuing flow of foreign investment?
Yeah, actually, political intervention have not only challenges. Actually, in China, if companies have political connections, they will closer to the state power, and can better access to some resources, and can make money easier. So I think that's why many foreign investors would like to invest their money in China, and actually many foreign investors also want to establish political connections to better access the resources, to better earn money. And I think that's the merits aspect of political intervention, and is what I want to talk about in my chapter 5, that other countries can learn from the Chinese experience. But for the challenges, my focus mainly on protect of the minority shareholders. Political intervention can reduce the efficiency, and can reduce the efficiency, and harm the many minority investors. But however, I think challenges and merits are all have from the political intervention. Yeah, I think.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. In your abstract, I know there could be certain typos there. but I'm just wondering whether this probably is one of the typos.
I mean, political intervention actually have the merits aspect. Yeah.
Because you are in the law school, and essentially much of it, if it has to resonate with the legal community, much of it should have, at least significant portion of your work should have substantial legal content, or what we call law content. So
yes.
So what's the law content in there?
Yeah.
Or potential law, because since it's work in progress, so what is the potential law content?
Yeah. Actually, the political factors shape the environment, economic environment, thus making the path of legal reforms unique, and making the corporate governance practice unique. And the political intervention, laws on paper, and their interactions between them shape the corporate governance practice in China. So it's a top-down process. The political intervention, economic environment, and then laws on paper, and then laws in practice. That's yeah.
The law content, I could see clearly. I think if you in slide 6 you discuss the structure. Chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5 are substantive chapters which are actually law focused, and when you talk about the governance and the enforcement institutions, obviously it is all about the legal rules, because those are the written institutions that ensure the control and the regulations and the effects of this governance system. And I think you clearly went into what Ben actually was trying to suggest when he specified what did he mean by corporate governance, the ownership and control, and the shareholders. You did discuss in detail in slide 8 when you were trying to discuss chapter 3. So there is a lot of law content there, and that coupled with political aspects of this study actually is a very is a new thing, is a new contribution to this field of study.
That is all for me. From me, I hope I have not taken too much of your time. Chair Stephanie.
Ben, thank you very, very, very much for those very insightful, very useful, very helpful comments. I think it's always great to hear from someone as established and experienced as yourself. If I may just very, very briefly add a couple of things for Ying before we then move on to Emilia, if that's okay. I agree with Ben and your comments on defining political determinants or the scope of what we exactly mean, given that China has such a, it has been described, a authoritarian, very kind of controlling governmental influence in the economy. So I think defining this or determining the scope of the political determinants would be a useful thing, but I'm sure you've planned to do this anyway, Ying. And with regards to the other thing, Ben, that you've said with regards to the hard law, if I understood you correctly, what are the hard law elements? I think you've mentioned this already, Ying. I think you're planning to look into comparative legal analysis. I think comparative legal analysis is really exciting and interesting in this particular topic, because of course every single corporate governance regime around the globe is tied to the underlying legal mentality, culture, tradition and system. Therefore it's very, very, very different, and therefore the Chinese system is inevitably, and I think, but that's up for debate, in the future also will inevitably be influenced by the party that you've mentioned, Ying, the Communist Party. So I think comparative legal analysis, maybe just a small tip, maybe with a system that's very similar to the Chinese legal system. So for example, the German legal system, where I'm from Germany, we have a very similar system to yours. So it might make sense to compare it with a very similar system and or the Anglo-American system to demonstrate a greater difference. And I think, Ying, China has already a corporate governance, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, a corporate governance code. And I think it's not that, I think it's quite, I'm not too sure about the year. I think maybe it has been there for 20 years. So if you, in terms of hard law analysis, looking at the, I think Ben, you suggested this already, looking at the corporate governance code, the Chinese one. I'm sure you will do this, and I'm sure will kind of help to facilitate this and offer this hard law angle, if you like. So Ben, thank you very much for that. Ying, if you are happy, we're now going to go to Emilia. If you're happy to, Emilia, please, if you're happy, ask the peer commentator to share your questions, your comments, if you like. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, so well done, Zheng. Thank you for sharing your research with us. I found it very educative, very insightful as well. I just have a few comments in addition to what Stephanie and Dr. Ben have said, especially in relation to your methodology. I have a question as well, but my comment relates to the methodology. So it appears that a large portion of your research is interdisciplinary, as it inculcates a lot of politics and to some extent economics, or like, because you're talking about corporate governance of companies in relation to the Chinese economy. So I think that you could expand on that methodology a lot more, as opposed to just sticking to the doctrinal legal analysis as well as the empirical research. So another question I have, or a question I have from your presentation, is on whether or not you think that a comparative element may be beneficial to the research. So you're looking at the political determinants as well as the challenges and solutions of these political determinants in relation to corporate governance in China. Do you think it'll be beneficial to incorporate some comparative element from maybe another jurisdiction or other jurisdictions? Because if you're of the opinion that the political interventionism in corporate governance in China is extreme, what are you comparing it to? Is there a standard that it should follow, or should China have its own standard that's exclusive to maybe the standard or the model that's found or applicable in other jurisdictions?
Yes, my research is not a comparative study, but as part of doctrinal legal research, references to the positions in other countries are needed. For example, when I'm discussing some mechanisms, both internal or external, I will look at other countries if they give the same position. For example, when I'm discussing the powers of the shareholder meeting in China, I would look at whether the laws in the US or UK give similar wide powers to shareholders meetings, because in China, due to the state control, due to the political control, the shareholder meetings have very strong powers in corporate governance. And when I'm discussing this, I will look at other countries if they have similar positions. Yeah, and other mechanisms, I will also refer to the positions in other countries. Yeah.
All right, okay, thank you for that answer, Ying. But I think what I'm trying to emphasize on is that in looking at what's obtainable in other countries like the US, as you've mentioned, that in itself is an element of comparison, because you're not just focusing on China, you're trying to draw some inference from other jurisdictions to see if that can be incorporated into your research into China's corporate governance. So that's basically what I'm trying to emphasize on.
Sorry, my internet was stopped. Can you repeat your?
Yes, sure. I'll be happy to. So, just drawing from your answer where you said that part of your doctrinal legal analysis is to make some inferences to the corporate governance structure in other jurisdictions, like the US, for example, which you mentioned. I'm saying that I think that in itself is an element of comparison, because you're looking at the structure of corporate governance and the extent of political determinants or political interventionism, as you may say, in those jurisdictions in comparison to what's obtainable at the moment in China, to see whether or not some of the models in those other jurisdictions, like the US, for example, can be incorporated into the Chinese corporate governance.
Yes, I will look at this other countries' positions, but I think it's maybe it's on my chapter 5 on the solutions. I will propose some solutions to solve those challenges in Chinese corporate governance. And in this chapter, I will look at other countries, other jurisdictions' positions, and see if their legal framework could adopt in Chinese corporate governance. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, great. So I have one last question. I just want to know what are the determinants or measures for the selection of your participants, because you mentioned that your empirical research would include interviews with directors of some Chinese companies as well as legal professionals. So is there an ethical measure, or is there a determinant with which you're using to select these participants? And because there's a very heavy political perspective to the research, do you think it would also be beneficial to incorporate interviews or the opinions of politicians or lawmakers, because the point of the research is basically to influence potentially the extent of their powers?
Yes, I think the interview part actually is important in my research, because by hearing what those who participate in corporate daily affairs, by hearing what they said, I can know better about the work of the party organizations and the labor division between the party organization with other governance bodies. But there are also limitations in interviews, because political topics is a little sensitive in China. So there is no guarantee that what people interviewed said is the truth. But to overcome this, I will combine other available materials, such as quantitative analysis, quantitative empirical data, and literature-based analysis, and as well as news reports, to make a comprehensive discussion as far as possible. Yeah.
Right. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Zheng. Thank you, Ying. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emilia, and thank you very much, Ying, for touching on some of these issues. I think, that dichotomy, that kind of tension that we have between the corporate sector in China and the party sector, which is almost a legal paradox. And I think, Ben, you touched on this earlier by saying, how can it be that there's so much political influence, yet there's such a huge demand for foreign direct investment? Isn't that a paradox? Isn't that a contradiction? So I think it's going to be really, really interesting to read your views and to hear some of the solutions, Ying, because I'm wondering, that's some of the questions I have, but before I bombard you guys with questions, I wanted to open the floor and see if any of the other participants has any questions before perhaps we can have we can ask another question. Nauman, you've raised your hand.
Yes. Thank you, Ying. I don't have any question. I just want to make a comment. But before I make comments, I need to confess that I am not an expert in the area of corporate governance. Yet, your presentation was clear enough, very simple in plain language. I was able to follow that, and I could understand the strengths and the gaps you identified and how you are contributing to the gaps in that. I think perhaps the way I understand the biggest strength of your research is what you're trying to suggest, what you're trying to imply is that it is the legal regulations. The wider literature on this topic is usually focused on the legal regulations and the institutions and how they control the different features of corporate governance. But you are trying to suggest that it's actually those features alone are not the determinant. Political interventionism also shape corporate governance. I think it is itself is the biggest contribution to this field, where the interdisciplinary studies are very few in number. And I think well done for that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much. I mean, it clearly added to my knowledge of corporate governance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nauman. Ying, would you like to respond? Would you like to say anything, or in response to that?
Yeah, no. Thank you very much for your suggestions on my research, and I will take some time to think about your suggestions and to think how should I go on my research. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions, any comments, any kind of suggestions, any points of critique, any further thoughts? If not, I have tons of questions. Ying, unfortunately, we can't.
I think Horace has got question. Horace raised his hand.
Sorry.
Yes. I just want to add to what was said by you, Nauman. So I believe so. So how you have structured chapter 3 and 4? Exactly, you have structured it around the law. So in company law, so the shareholders, they have the vote. So you are actually in that chapter looking at how the shareholders will exercise their vote. So how would they appoint the senior management? And then also I think you touch on the requirement in the company law that even as a private company, so they will need to have a party organization in their company. So you are exactly structuring your discussion around the law. So I think it's actually just like what Nauman has said. So there should be enough legal content. So
just trying to clarify, Ying, he's trying to suggest that you answered the question excellently. The answer to the question is there in your very clear. So we are very happy with that. Okay. Stephanie, any other question you wanted to ask?
I would, but I want to be mindful of people's time and various other commitments. It was just maybe a quick thing, and we can, it doesn't have to take a very long time. Ying, you mentioned the best balance. I think you were saying earlier you're endeavoring to research to find out, to discuss, assess the best balance between the corporate sector and the party influence. And I was just wondering, from what I can see, fundamental changes are needed because the Communist Party has such a massive influence to the extent that the Communist Party puts their own people into the role of directors. And there has been critique in the past of saying that those people aren't really qualified. It's more about party relations. And I'm wondering, when trying to discuss the best balance of the two of them, do you think we need fundamental changes? Do you think we're going to see a shift to a more corporate version and or a more party version? Do you think there's going to be, how likely is a fundamental change? Or do you think it's probably going to stay more or less the same, because we cannot forget, I think, Ben, you mentioned this earlier, that China is the second, third most successful economy in terms of export, close up with the United States. And you cannot rationalize this success away, and it's going to be a very, very potent and successful future market. So maybe the Communist Party has an argument for saying, no, why should we change anything? It's perfect the way it is. So I was just interested, Ying, in that best balance that you mentioned earlier, and which way do you think that's going to go? Is there a convergence, a divergence between the party and the corporate sector, or maybe not? That would be something I'd be interested to hear.
Yes, actually, I don't think the party will lose their control to the corporate governance in China, because since 2012, when the Xi Jinping put some new rules on corporate governance in China, there is a new trend that more intense than before. So the party participation are more important than before. So I think, actually, I don't think they can get a balance between the control and governance. But it's an idea, just an idea of mine. Yeah.
Excellent, Ying. Sorry for. I just want to be really mindful and respectful of people's time. It's been wonderful. Thank you, everyone, especially to the discussant and the peer commentators, for coming along. Thank you very much, Ying, for your presentation. Wonderful, interesting stuff. I'm sorry that we have to leave it at that. Can I please just draw people's attention to next week's presentation? Teferi Michael Hassan is going to discuss constitutionalism in the multi-ethnic state of Ethiopia, democracy and the rule of law. Matter is his synopsis, if you like. Please join if you are free. And yeah, thank you very much to everyone, especially Nauman, for all the hard work and all the support coming up to this event. And thank you to all the participants, and especially the discussant and the peer commentator, and Ying, to you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Look after
Thank you.
yourself.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
For your excellent theory of this.